The Pigeon Lady of Willow Creek Park. Agnes Meadowbrook was known, affectionately and sometimes with a hint of pity, as the Pigeon Lady of Willow Creek Park. Every morning, rain or shine, she'd arrive precisely at 10, her wicker basket brimming with a special seed mix, sunflower, millet, cracked corn, all George's secret recipe. Even the squirrels knew the sound of her sensible shoes on the paved path, their bushy tails twitching with anticipation. Today, the sun dripped gold through the budding leaves of the willow trees, painting dappled patterns on the path. Agnes inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and burgeoning blossoms filling her lungs. "Good morning, my feathered friends," she chirped, her voice a warm contralto that carried on the gentle breeze. A flurry of gray wings erupted around her as she scattered the seeds. The pigeons cooed and strutted, their iridescent necks gleaming in the sunlight. She knew them all, or thought she did. There was Percy, missing a toe, Beatrice, with the crooked beak, and Pip, the perpetually hungry fledgling who always seemed to be underfoot. George would have loved this weather, she murmured, a wistful smile gracing her lips. He'd always said spring was a time for new beginnings, though she hadn't felt much like beginning anything new since he'd gone. The pigeons, though, they were a constant, a comforting ritual in a world that had shifted on its axis. "Agnes, dear. Lovely day, isn't it?" Mrs. Gable, a woman whose floral dresses always seemed a size too big, shuffled towards her, leaning heavily on her cane. "Indeed it is, Margaret," Agnes replied, straightening up. "The pigeons are particularly ravenous this morning." "They always are when you're around," Mrs. Gable chuckled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You spoil them rotten, you do." "Someone has to," Agnes said, a playful glint in her eye. "Keeps me busy, you know." And George always enjoyed feeding them. Called it his avian therapy. They chatted for a while about the upcoming flower show, the price of rhubarb at Miller's Market, and the scandalous behavior of young Timothy next door. Agnes enjoyed these little conversations, these fleeting moments of connection that broke the monotony of her days. But as the clock tower in the distance chimed 11:30, she felt a familiar pang of anxiety. "Oh, dear me," she exclaimed, glancing at her watch. "I'm terribly late. Murder Most Foul starts in 15 minutes, and I can't miss a single clue." Mrs. Gable chuckled again. "Off you go then, Agnes. Don't want to miss your murders." Agnes gathered her empty basket, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of guilt and excitement. She hurried along the path, her sensible shoes tapping a frantic rhythm against the pavement. The pigeons scattered, startled by her sudden departure, but she didn't stop. She had to get home, had to settle into her favorite armchair with a cup of Earl Grey, and lose herself in the intricate plot twists and eccentric characters of her beloved detective show. Life was quiet, predictable, and filled with the comforting presence of pigeons, floral dresses, and fictional murders. But beneath the surface, a tiny seed of anticipation had been planted, a seed that whispered of something more. A blue purse and a worried artist. Michael's charcoal chased the stark angles of the winter oak against the washed-out January sky. He relished the season's austere beauty, that crystalline light filtering through bare branches, revealing hidden form. A lonely car horn punctuated the park's stillness, underscored by the whisper of wind-blown leaves across the path. He paused, head cocked. A jarring note against the monochrome scenery, a cerulean handbag perched on a nearby bench. No one in sight. He resumed sketching, a tic born of unease. Perhaps its owner was momentarily captivated by the iced-over pond, or tossing crumbs to the pigeons. Yet the purse remained conspicuously abandoned. Michael capped his charcoal, approaching the bench, his pulse quickening. Up close, the bag's vibrant hue was even more striking, an audacious splash against the aged wood. Fine leather, creased with evident care. He hesitated, then lifted it. Surprisingly light. A quick survey of the sparse surroundings revealed no one frantic, no one searching. He inhaled deeply and unfastened the clasp. Inside, a small wallet contained a meager sum. A lipstick, coral bright, nestled beside reading glasses in a flowered case. Then, the photograph. He gently slid it out. A woman, perhaps late 60s, face mapped with the delicate tracery of time and mirth. She stood in a rose-choked garden, her smile utterly genuine. A pang of empathy resonated within Michael. He imagined her retracing her steps, anxiety escalating with each fruitless search. Replacing the photograph, he closed the purse, cradling it in his hands. He couldn't abandon it. The park's emptiness invited theft. The police crossed his mind, but the prospect of bureaucratic entanglements tightened his gut. More than that, he felt an unexpected guardianship towards the purse, towards the woman in the snapshot. He wanted to hand-deliver it. To witness that smile firsthand, to offer reassurance. A glance at his watch. Dusk was deepening, shadows lengthening. He'd have to take it home. Tomorrow, he'd embark on a quest to find her. He could only hope he succeeded. The kindest of notes. The handbag rested on Michael's kitchen table, a small, forgotten world amid his carefully curated disorder. Sunlight, filtered through the window, painted the aged leather and delicate clasp with a warm glow. He circled it warily, like a fox considering a trap. Surrender it to the police. Anonymous. Secure. But the idea felt hollow, a disservice to the owner's likely worry. He flipped it open once more. The time-worn billfold, scattered receipts, the subtle aroma of lavender and aged paper, they whispered a history he couldn't dismiss. He pictured her, perhaps returning home after a tiresome day, the bag of familiar weight at her side, then the cold wave of realization. Gone. He scoured his desk, unearthing a pad of thick, ivory paper and his cherished fountain pen. The pen hovered above the blankness. What could he possibly communicate? Found your bag. Hope it wasn't too much trouble. Too clipped, too impersonal by far. He inhaled deeply and began. Dear Madam, I discovered your handbag on a park bench this afternoon. Hopefully, this reaches you soon and alleviates any concern. Having noted the address on your license, I plan to return it tomorrow morning. He paused, chewing the pen's cap. It felt inadequate. He yearned to express something beyond the mere return of misplaced property. He longed to acknowledge the vulnerability he felt, gazing upon these private details of a stranger's existence. He went on, the pen gliding more smoothly now. I can only imagine the feeling of violation when something so personal goes missing. Rest assured, it was untouched and safe. I trust the contents are all accounted for. I was particularly taken by the photograph of the young girl, your granddaughter, perhaps. She possesses a truly captivating smile. He stopped again, a faint warmth coloring his cheeks. Was he overstepping? Too, something. Yet, he couldn't erase it. It was sincere, and sincerity, in his book, was invariably the kindest approach. He signed simply, Michael Rossi. He carefully folded the note, creating a sharp-edged rectangle. A final glance inside the handbag, placing the note within the wallet, nestled amongst the worn bills and faded photos. He zipped the bag shut, a small, decisive act. Suddenly, he felt a strange reluctance to simply leave it by the door. Instead, he settled it onto the passenger seat, securing it with the seatbelt as if it were fragile cargo. He cast one last look before switching off the lights. The handbag, transformed from mere object to a silent pledge, a connection waiting to unfold. A weighty anticipation settled in his stomach. He hoped Agnes would appreciate his efforts. He hoped he wasn't intruding. A reunion in the sunshine. The morning sun, a painter with strokes of gold, gilded Willow Creek Park. Michael scanned the familiar landscape, the air crisp and clean after the previous night's light rain. The swings swayed gently in the breeze, empty. A dog walker ambled by, leash taut, the golden retriever sniffing intently at the base of an oak. But no Agnes. He circled the duck pond, its surface reflecting the azure sky. He debated leaving the purse with the park ranger, but the thought felt wrong. The contents seemed so personal, the worn leather imbued with a history he couldn't quite place. He wanted to return it himself. And he wanted her to read the note. He spotted her near the old bandstand, a figure swathed in a long, gray coat, scattering seeds. Pigeons erupted around her in a flurry of wings and cooing, a feathered ballet performed just for her. Relief washed over him, a warmth spreading through his chest that surprised him. He took a deep breath and started towards her, the gravel crunching softly under his worn sneakers. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice a little louder than he intended. Agnes turned, her brow furrowing slightly as she shielded her eyes from the sun. The pigeons, momentarily startled, circled and then resettled, pecking at the scattered seed. She recognized him instantly. You found my purse." Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of relief and something else he couldn't decipher. He held it out to her. "Yes, I did. I hope you haven't been too worried." Agnes's hand flew to her chest. "Worried? Oh, my dear boy, I was frantic. Everything I own, practically, is in there. My house key, my medication. Thank you so much." She clutched the purse to her, her knuckles white against the worn leather. "I don't know how to thank you." "It was nothing, really," Michael said, shrugging, but a smile played on his lips. "I left a little note inside." Agnes's eyes widened. She fumbled with the clasp, her fingers stiff with age, and pulled out the folded piece of paper. The pigeons, sensing a lull in the feeding, began to edge closer, their beady eyes fixed on her hands. She unfolded the note carefully, her lips moving silently as she read. The wind rustled the leaves in the nearby trees, creating a soft, whispering sound. When she looked up, her eyes were glistening. You said such kind things." She paused, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "That you admired my dedication to the birds." Michael felt a wave of heat rise in his own face. He hadn't meant to sound so forward. He'd just been trying to express the genuine sense of peace and quiet joy he felt watching her the previous day. "I meant it," he said quietly. "It was inspiring." Agnes looked down at the note again, tracing the words with her finger. Then, she met his gaze, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Well, Mr. Rossi," he supplied. "Michael Rossi." "Michael Rossi," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. Perhaps I could offer you a coffee as a small token of my gratitude. There's a lovely little cafe just across the street. Coffee at Chloe's Cafe." The last of the flock had flown, their bellies full of seed, their wings a blur against the pale morning sky. Agnes gathered her empty bag, a lightness in her step that had nothing to do with its reduced weight. "I insist," she'd said, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. "Coffee. With him?" He'd looked surprised, then a warmth had spread across his face that made her own cheeks flush. "Chloe's, then?" he'd asked, and she'd nodded, suddenly very aware of the wrinkles around her eyes and the way her hands trembled slightly. Chloe's Cafe was a splash of sunshine yellow on a corner of Main Street. The aroma of roasting beans spilled onto the sidewalk, a comforting invitation. Agnes hadn't been inside in months, preferring the solitary company of her pigeons. Michael was already there, sitting at a small table by the window, the morning light catching the gold in his hair. He stood when she approached, pulling out a chair for her. "Such a gentleman." "Thank you," she murmured, settling into the worn cushion. Chloe, a whirlwind of energy behind the counter, caught Agnes's eye and winked. Chloe knew everyone's business, or at least, she made it her business to know. Agnes suspected half the town's romances had blossomed under Chloe's watchful gaze and expertly crafted lattes. "The usual, Agnes?" Chloe called out, already reaching for a mug. "Just black today, Chloe, thank you," Agnes replied. "And Michael?" "Just black for me too," thanks, he said, smiling at Chloe. Chloe placed their coffees down with a flourish. So, Michael, she said, leaning on the counter, her eyes twinkling, how do you know our Agnes? Agnes felt a blush creep up her neck. Michael found my handbag yesterday, she explained, and was kind enough to return it. A good Samaritan, are we? Chloe teased, then, with a final wink, she retreated to the espresso machine, leaving Agnes and Michael to their coffee. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with a nervous energy. Agnes took a sip of her coffee, the bitter taste grounding her. I really am grateful, she said, finally breaking the silence. It wasn't just the money, although that was certainly helpful. It was, the note. It was very kind. Michael ran a hand through his hair. It was nothing, he said, but his eyes held hers, and Agnes knew it wasn't nothing. Tell me, she said, setting down her mug, what do you do? He told her about his work as a landscape architect, his passion for creating green spaces in the city, his love of hiking in the nearby mountains. She, in turn, told him about her quiet life, her love of birds, the solace she found in Willow Creek Park. As they talked, Agnes noticed the small details, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the gentle cadence of his voice, the way he listened, really listened, to what she had to say. She found herself laughing at his stories, sharing anecdotes she hadn't thought about in years. The cafe faded away, the clatter of cups and the murmur of conversations becoming a distant hum. It was just them, two souls connecting over coffee, finding unexpected common ground in the most ordinary of settings. Old movies and new beginnings. Agnes scattered seeds, the gray wings aflutter around her ankles like a feathered storm. The morning sun, still shy, painted the park in pastel hues, softening the edges of the city that pressed in around it. She hummed a tune, something George used to whistle, a forgotten melody from an even more forgotten movie. That's, as time goes by, isn't it? Agnes turned, surprised. Michael stood a few feet away, hands shoved deep in his pockets, a sheepish grin on his face. It is, she said, a little breathless. You know it? Casablanca's my favorite, he admitted. Though I'm partial to the Maltese Falcon myself. A genuine smile touched Agnes's lips. Bogart, through and through, eh? She chuckled. George loved those old films. Said they had real stories, real characters. None of this pyrotechnic nonsense they churn out these days. Michael nodded, leaning against a nearby oak. He was right. There's something about the way they tell stories, the atmosphere. It just gets under your skin. He hesitated. My grandfather introduced me to them. We used to watch them every Sunday. The pigeons cooed and pecked, oblivious to the shared nostalgia hanging in the air. Agnes found herself relaxing, the slight tremor in her hand subsiding. George and I met at a showing of The Philadelphia Story. Can you imagine? A whirlwind romance fueled by Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. She sighed, a wistful smile playing on her lips. He always said I reminded him of Tracy Lord, independent, a little stubborn, but with a good heart underneath it all. Michael's gaze was gentle. He sounds like a good man. He was, Agnes said, her voice thick with emotion. The best. We had a good life. Simple, but good. She paused, gathering herself. He passed away 5 years ago. Seems like yesterday, and a lifetime ago, all at once. I'm sorry, Michael said softly. Agnes shrugged, scattering more seeds. It's the way of things, isn't it? The world keeps turning, even when yours stops. He shifted, his gaze drifting to the cityscape beyond the park. It does. I'm trying to get mine turning again, to be honest. Trying to make a go of being an artist. It's challenging. Feast or famine, mostly famine. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that seemed both boyish and weary. My grandfather always said, don't starve for your art, Michael. Get a real job. But I can't imagine doing anything else. Agnes studied him, seeing the flicker of passion in his eyes, the vulnerability beneath the surface. George always said, follow your heart, Agnes. Even if it leads you down a bumpy road. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. He was a practical man, but he believed in dreams. A robin landed on a nearby branch, its bright red breast a splash of color against the muted greens. The air felt lighter, somehow, the weight of the city momentarily lifted. Coffee? Michael asked, his eyes meeting hers. There's a little cafe just around the corner. My treat. We can dissect the merits of Bogart versus Cagney. Agnes hesitated, then nodded. All right, Michael. Coffee sounds lovely. And I'll defend Bogart to the death. Regulars at Chloe's. The usual, Agnes. Chloe called out, already reaching for a warmed blueberry muffin. Her smile, as bright as the cafe's yellow walls, never failed to lift Agnes's spirits. Please, Chloe. And Michael will have his black coffee, I believe. Agnes replied, settling into their corner booth. The worn vinyl felt comfortably familiar now. Michael arrived moments later, a newspaper tucked under his arm. Morning, Chloe. Thanks, Agnes. He slid into the booth, the newspaper abandoned on the table. Something smells delicious. That'll be Agnes's muffin, Chloe chirped, placing their orders before them. So, anything exciting happening in Willow Creek this week? Besides the usual pigeon drama, Agnes? Agnes chuckled. They seem to be managing without too much squabbling, thank you very much. She took a bite of the muffin, the sweet berries bursting in her mouth. Although, Bertram seems to have a new admirer. A rather brazen little thing. Their laughter mingled with the gentle hum of the coffee machine. Michael recounted a mishap at the bookstore, involving a teetering stack of first editions and a very startled cat. Agnes, in turn, described her latest encounter with Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning roses, which were, according to Mrs. Henderson, being unfairly targeted by the local squirrels. Chloe leaned against the counter, listening with amusement. She'd come to look forward to their weekly visits. Agnes, with her quiet elegance and birdseed-filled pockets, and Michael, with his kind eyes and easy smile, were a welcome addition to the cafe's usual clientele. She had seen a lot of couples come and go in her time. You know, Agnes, Chloe said, after a lull in the conversation, you seem lighter, somehow. Happier. Agnes blushed, a faint rose tinting her cheeks. Well, Michael is good company. Michael squeezed her hand gently across the table. The pleasure is all mine, Agnes. Chloe's eyes twinkled. Don't be afraid to try new things, Agnes. Life's too short for just pigeons and muffins, you know. Though, those muffins are pretty good. She winked. Maybe a scenic drive? Or a movie? Something unexpected. Agnes considered this, her gaze drifting towards the window. The thought of venturing beyond her familiar routine was both daunting and exhilarating. I don't know, Chloe. I haven't been to a cinema in years. Then it's about time you went. Michael looks like he'd be happy to escort you. Chloe beamed, already picturing the possibilities. A movie date, followed by a romantic dinner, she could practically write the script herself. Besides, she added with a sly grin, Bertram might need a break from your attention. Michael raised his coffee cup. A movie sounds wonderful, Agnes. Unless you prefer the squirrels and roses. Agnes smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. Perhaps, a movie wouldn't be so bad. The cafe, with its warm light and the comforting aroma of coffee, suddenly felt like the starting point of a brand new adventure. Painting, gardening, and growing together. The usual flurry of feathers greeted Agnes as she entered Willow Creek Park. Pigeons, sensing her arrival, swooped and cooed, landing on her outstretched arms and shoulders. The familiar weight of their tiny claws usually soothed her, but today, a restlessness tugged at the edges of her contentment. It had been a week since Michael had returned her handbag, a week since she'd felt a spark she thought long extinguished. Later that afternoon, Michael found Agnes near her small garden patch, a riot of color tucked away behind the rose bushes. He cleared his throat. "Agnes? I was wondering, how did the painting go?" Agnes looked up, surprised. "Michael. Oh, it was an experience. I haven't held a brush in decades." She gestured towards a canvas leaning against the shed. A splash of blues and greens, vaguely resembling the park's pond, stared back at him. "It's dreadful, really." Michael knelt beside her, studying the painting. "I don't think so. It has energy. And the way you've captured the light on the water, it's beautiful." He hesitated. "Perhaps, if you're open to it, I could offer a few suggestions. I've taken a few classes." Agnes's eyes widened. "You paint?" "Sometimes," he admitted, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. "Mostly landscapes. But I'd be happy to share what I know." A hesitant smile touched Agnes's lips. "I would like that very much, Michael." The next day, instead of painting, Michael found himself knee-deep in Agnes's garden. Weeding, to be precise. Agnes, her hands gnarled with age but still nimble, identified each plant with a loving touch. "These are foxgloves, Michael. They need plenty of sun. And these delicate ones are forget-me-nots. They remind me of my late husband, Samuel. He used to bring me a bouquet every spring." Michael carefully pulled a weed from around a vibrant red poppy. "They're beautiful, Agnes. I don't know much about flowers, I'm afraid. My apartment barely gets enough light for a cactus." Agnes chuckled. "Well, you're learning now. Gardening is much like painting, in a way. You're creating something beautiful, bringing color and life to the world." As the weeks turned into months, their lives intertwined. Agnes, emboldened by Michael's gentle encouragement, began to experiment with her painting, adding bolder strokes and brighter hues. Her canvases, once timid and reserved, now pulsed with life. Michael, in turn, found solace in the garden, the scent of roses and the feel of soil grounding him in a way his city life never had. One crisp autumn evening, Michael found Agnes putting the final touches on a new painting, a vibrant rendering of the park in the golden light of sunset. "What do you think?" she asked, turning to him, her eyes sparkling. Michael stepped closer, captivated. "It's magnificent, Agnes. You've truly captured the spirit of this place." He pulled a small, wrapped package from his bag. "I wanted to give you something. A thank you, for sharing your garden with me, for teaching me about flowers, and for everything." Agnes carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a set of professional-grade paintbrushes. Her breath caught in her throat. "Michael, these are beautiful." He smiled, his gaze meeting hers. "Just a little something to help you keep growing, Agnes. Just like the flowers. A love that blooms in the park." The air hung crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Agnes scattered seeds, the familiar cooing of pigeons a comforting symphony in the morning quiet. She felt a lightness she hadn't known in years, a gentle warmth that bloomed in her chest whenever she thought of Michael. He'd been late today. Agitated, she began to worry. Maybe he changed his mind about her. Then, she saw him. He walked with purpose, a hesitant smile gracing his lips. "Agnes," he called, his voice a warm rumble that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. "Michael," she replied, her own smile mirrored in his eyes. He joined her on the bench, the pigeons unfazed by his presence, pecking at the seeds around their feet. He didn't speak, simply sat beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. After a moment, he reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't pull away. The pigeons swirled around them, a feathered vortex of gray and white, oblivious to the silent conversation unfolding between two souls. Agnes watched them, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in the magnetic pull of Michael's gaze. "Remember the day you returned my handbag?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He chuckled softly. "How could I forget? It felt like fate nudging me in a very specific direction." "Fate is a funny thing," Agnes mused. "I never imagined this." She squeezed his hand gently. "Me neither," Michael admitted, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I thought I was just doing the right thing, returning a lost item. I never expected to find you." They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, the only sound the rustling of leaves and the cooing of pigeons. The park, usually bustling with morning joggers and dog walkers, seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the fragile beauty of their connection. "It's unexpected," Agnes said finally, breaking the silence. "And a little scary." "I know," Michael replied, his voice laced with understanding. "But sometimes, the best things in life are the ones we don't see coming." He turned to face her, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made her breath catch in her throat. "Agnes, being with you, it feels right. It feels good." She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deceit, any sign that this was all a fleeting fancy. But she found only sincerity, only warmth, only a reflection of her own burgeoning feelings. "It does," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "It feels like coming home." He leaned closer, his hand cupping her cheek. His touch was gentle, reverent, as if she were a delicate flower that might shatter at the slightest pressure. "Can I kiss you, Agnes?" he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. She nodded, her eyes fluttering closed. His lips met hers, soft and tentative at first, then deepening into a kiss that spoke of longing, of hope, of a love that had blossomed unexpectedly in the heart of Willow Creek Park. The world around them faded away, the pigeons, the trees, the distant sounds of the city, all dissolving into a single, perfect moment. It was a kiss that promised a future filled with warmth, with laughter, and with the quiet comfort of knowing they had found something truly special.